3 people.
Like to call a regional school committee?
We're working already.
Just before we start, I want to make an announcement that we will have a slight change to the agenda. We did receive our waiver letter today from the Department of Ed, approving the critical shortage waiver for Bill. So after executive session, we will be returning to open session
Briefly.
shortly after that. Any community comments this evening? Thank you for coming. Okay, we'll move on to food service report, and Bill, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Don. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. First item up for discussion and potential action is 2 pieces to do with our food service report. The first is our year-to-date financials that also provide a look ahead, a projection for the last 3 months in terms of projecting our bottom line for FY16. And then there is a proposal to increase lunch prices. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to, do you want to start, Karen? Or Joy to Janelle? Turn it over to Dr.
I
Leduc.
think because over the past year, you've seen how food service has taken to heart the action items from the Advocate report. And this is one of those items that we were gathering data where you can recall it was brought before you about a year ago, but this year done some looking at the financials and taking next steps. So I want to turn it over to Janelle, but thank her and her staff for the work that they have accomplished this year.
Thank you. Yes, I've been working with the business office on our financials, and we're definitely in better shape than last year.
Do you want to grab that mic, Janelle?
In better shape this year, particularly at the Chickering Elementary. We made some labor cuts there that have worked out well, and participation has risen both at Pine Hill and Chickering, and is steady, the same as last year, I think, at the region. We are seeing more income per month due to the changes in the a la carte pricing. So, you know, our snacks are based on a 30% food cost, and that has helped us a little bit financially. But with the cost of lunch, on the average being about $3.07 at elementary to put out a elementary lunch, and we're running closer to $3.20 to $3.25 at the high school and middle school here, asking to take a look at an increase in price. One of the papers you should have received has the pricing, what the estimated lunches would create based on a 25 cent increase, or based on a 50-cent increase for each school. I know I definitely strongly suggest a 25-cent increase. I think, I'd like you to take a look at it and see what you think. I've also provided you some food comparisons from what we were doing before the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids, and have been moving towards healthier options in the years since 2012. And every year we pick up more clean label products, which are items that don't have all the additives, preservatives, and anything we can get cut out of these items, the better your chance for using the food item in multiple dishes, multiple menus, and that helps save some money as well. But as you can see, the difference in cost, just from whole regular bread or pasta to whole grain, is an increase, and then the whole muscle products compared to a chopped in form or a product. Even our burgers and burger meat has changed, so everything's gone up. And then we've included fish items that are higher priced in addition as well. I've also provided you with this year's report from Tech, where there's about 90 communities now that join us for bidding, so we have the access to their information. We ask for a survey every year, and the pricing information was done on Google Docs from that forum. So you'll see a lot of different towns and cities on here. You'll, where it says NA on any of them, that means it's not applicable at the time, that somebody would, is just not sure which way their district is going. The blank also means the same thing, as does a question mark. I just pretty much left it as is. There are a few districts that definitely put in what they are going to this coming for FY17. And I also put in bold for you any towns or cities that are at a higher price than we are now. One of them in particular, I'd like you to look at it. It's a close town to us. It's Wayland. And they were reviewed by Advocate right after we were. They called me to talk about the experience, and I recommended that they have them come in and go through the program. And they did, and as with that recommendation from them, they went up on their prices much higher than I'm looking for right now. Is there any questions I can answer for anybody?
Well, can you just repeat the average serving cost?
Correct. I'm looking at about $307 to $310 for the elementary lunches, and then closer to $325, even a few of them $350, but that's a high-end lunch, and I can sell that as a lunch, a higher-end lunch.
Just as an added piece of information, the last time we increased the rates for school lunch was effective fiscal year 13. It's been 4 years.
And we've pretty much always been on a 3-year cycle. Might have been 1 or 2.
And was that a quarter as well?
Yes.
So, sorry, I have a quick question, which I realize I literally just walked in, so it's a little rude. But as long as we're talking about lunch, I was in a positive meeting earlier today, and one thing that was brought up is somebody had visited the Needham High Rock School and said their participation is actually 70% versus ours, and that a lot of it is not actually different food, but just different presentation. And so sort of as long as we're talking sales, which talks about participation, I'm just wondering, we had the Advocate report, and we sort of held off on capital projects for Linquist because we keep talking about restructuring. So what is our timeline for looking at this school lunch program overall and for making changes if we're going to make them overall Linquist with the food service program? I just don't feel like I know who's in charge of that and what we're thinking on that.
So very quickly, any major work that would be done, certainly in the kitchen, we're at least a year away from that. The region capital subcommittee talked about that during the planning for this year, and there are plans that we haven't got to quite yet, but I agreed to meet with representatives of groups that have a stake in what happens in Linquist. So certainly the food service program, but the performing groups, the principals in terms of what's happening during lunch. So the goal was to collect some data around what the representative groups feel their needs are for that space, and to put together a report that identifies those needs and ideas, frankly. And I think it's a time to perhaps, put down and discuss all of our needs, regardless. To provide that for the capital subcommittee to review when that process starts sometime, this summer, likely. And, to make some decisions on perhaps putting together a request for a feasibility study to have some consultants come in and tell us, based on what the needs of the different groups are, what would need to be done to that facility and what the potential costs might be. So that's kind of where we are right now. And but there's also a feasibility study that is planned for this summer to look at storage needs for both the maintenance and athletic departments at the region. And so the capital subcommittee will be exploring whether as part of that, there can be some work done around looking at storage in Lindquist, because that is, other than the food service, the kitchen area, we do know that that's an area of need that a number of groups have identified. So we're still kind of in this, in between stage.
And are you the person who's heading it up in terms of, or who's the sort of point person?
So right now, I'm kind of the point person on collecting some data
Okay.
that would then be shared with the capital subcommittee.
Okay, and then they would decide if they want to do it for you guys.
Yes. And I think when we get into a little further discussion about the lunch prices, I think it's important to note, and perhaps if there are questions about the financials up to this point and the projected end of the year bottom line, it's interesting to note in each of the three, under each of the three operations, that we are projecting at this point increased reserve fund balances at the end of the year. And I would point out that certainly in Dover, we've been in the red the last couple of years at least. This operating budget has had to support that at the end of the year. Looks like we'll be in a positive balance mode this year. But that reserve fund, under the way we're currently operating, I believe is an important source of funds with each of the three operations for the committees to be considering as use for capital needs. And right now, the balance of those funds would suggest that there's not a lot that can be done in terms of capital needs, given the balance. So given that employee costs are rising, given that food costs have risen over the last 3 years, or almost 4 years, since there was an increase in the prices previously, it does make sense to me to increase the cost of lunches. But while we're doing that, I think it's interesting to hear what's happening in some other districts, and perhaps there's some more work we can do in truly trying to understand, how the High Rock School, what's behind the 70-some-odd % participation
They're
rate.
actually not serving different food. It's not like they're serving, some ridiculous gourmet, sushi or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
She said it was more with what they're able to do with, so for example, I guess they just have more cooling trays, so they're more able to put out fresh fruit because it stays cold longer, whereas here, I guess we don't have as many, so it's hard to put out fresh fruit because it's slimy 3 hours later. So it's, things like that, just more cooling
Yeah.
trays, more warming trays, so that it's easier to have hot food stay hot longer. So they don't actually need to make different food, they just have different things to put it in so that the food they have stays fresher longer, so that through several lunches, it's still appealing.
Sure.
Which, it seems like, wow, that's a really sort of, sounds like, I wouldn't think would be, doesn't require some huge overhaul of, of what we're serving, is just what we're serving then. So I'll have her hook up with you then. I think she just wasn't quite sure. And give more detail of, what she saw in the High Rock kitchen and school, because I guess it is, it does have a very, like I said, a 70% participation program without doing a whole lot different in what they're serving. So.
Just had a question about expenses. The, like the children, the retirement fund transfer,
Let me say, I apologize, that where it says retirement and fund transfer REG, that was my note for the region, because that's the only place that happens, and that's why there's zeros in both Dover and Sherborn.
well, that's fine. That actually, I think, brings up the point of the expenses. So the retirement for one person? Or
Two.
Two people. I know. And healthcare is not included, right? So
Correct.
the reality is, it's not a reflection of the food cost.
No, so in Dover and Sherborn, my understanding is that those operations, the retirement cost, the retirement contribution cost to Norfolk County, and health insurance have always been subsidized through the town budgets. At the region, the retirement contribution is part of the cost of operations through the revolving fund, but health insurance is not.
Just, I mean, if you just added 2 health plans, that's 30 grand.
Oh.
A lot.
Oh, sure. Oh, absolutely.
Seems like, just for the sake of looking at this, it would be, we need to include that to get us through this process, you know?
Well, where I've worked in other districts where food operations were,
For the region.
yeah, but regardless of whether it's a region or a single town, in those communities that supported their own food service operations as opposed to a vendor, it's very standard that those costs are picked up within the community or the town budget. It's at the local level, where there's in just a single community, I've never seen a case where the food operations paid for the retirement contribution costs. I think it's more, you see that more at regional districts, but that's just been my experience. Doesn't make it right, but, and typically, the financials do not report on, in those cases, what the retirement or health insurance or other benefit costs are.
Right. Okay, so we see what the cost is in all the other towns, but we don't know if it's profitable or not, right? And we don't know if the food's comparable or not. Okay, I was just, this is just for clarification.
Go ahead.
Since we're on that subject, I just had a clarifying question on that retirement fund transfer number for fiscal year 16 in the region. Is that a full year number or is that a 2/3?
My understanding is the full year number.
It is a full year number. And the difference between the FY16 and the previous year, or certainly FY15, is the transfer from the regional revolving fund. In FY15, the budget was built with a larger amount identified to support the operating budget that would be transferred from the revolving fund. FY16, that number went down, and in FY17, that number is actually 0 going forward.
So all things being equal, you could expect another $80,000 gain next year?
No.
Is it really 0?
So this is not a gain, it's an actual cost.
But is it?
You're not transferring that.
Oh, yes, not,
Next year,
yeah.
if I have 0 there and everything else is equal,
Yeah.
I can expect that my bottom line is going to go up by 80,000?
So the retirement contribution cost for FY16 were about $63,000. 17 of it, so the remaining 17 is a transfer to the operating budget from the revolving fund. Yes. No.
So Bill, can you help me understand school practice on lunch budgets or, school lunch budgets in terms of what is the cost of lunch pay for, as opposed to all the miscellaneous items, and we have the difference here between the region and the locals. I don't know what other public schools do, and sort of touch on, is the price of lunch supposed to be supporting the full cost of the program? Or are we providing it because we need to provide lunch? We need to charge something for that. What is the market rate we can charge for lunch?
So
That's
I'll
what I'm
let
trying to
Janelle,
figure out.
I'll say a few words, then I'll let Janelle
Yeah, either
jump
one.
in where I misspeak.
Okay.
So the cost of lunches that Janelle mentioned earlier, we have to remember that is the actual cost to prepare that lunch. But we receive a subsidy from the government, from the feds, for all of those lunches that we.
Right, that's why they're called.
Right. So while the true cost is $3.10, for example, for each of those meals, we receive a subsidy from the federal government through the state's food service program, through DESE. And that's counted, that's part of the revenue, so that's the UDSA revenue. That's a part of what you see there. In terms of other districts, and you can see on the tech lunch price survey, it's very, very common that elementary lunches, for example, cost less and are priced less than at the middle school or the high school. And there are cases where a middle school lunch might cost a little more than the elementary lunch, and the high school lunch price may go beyond that. My understanding is that there's no limit, or there's no restriction, probably a better word, on the cost of school lunches that the school committee determines. Now, I'm right?
Correct.
Yeah. So there are no regulations around that. The goal, I think, for successful food service operations, that to the extent possible, they can pay for themselves, minus perhaps the cost of benefits, or in some cases, retirement contributions. It's a delicate balance between a cost that is affordable for families and the participation rate,
Right.
for the food service programs. And, I don't know the history in these districts for the participation rate. It appears that we're seeing some increases in that, certainly over last year.
Past 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going up.
But, one of the data pieces we may want to consider collecting is looking at like communities. If there are communities that we compare ourselves to that have higher participation rates, I think it would be worth trying to determine, what drives their participation rate versus what is driving ours. Because we could probably learn some positive things from that.
And I did notice that Holliston, Hopkinton, and Millis aren't part of the tech bid? Or they just
did
didn't
not-
reply?
Correct.
Okay. I wasn't sure if they did something different.
No, this is who responded.
Okay.
So I guess this is a survey that you received from the other schools, so you don't really have an idea of the quality of the food. But one of the things that I think has happened in the kitchens at the Dover-Sherborn schools is that there's been an increase in the quality of the food. There's been an increase in the amount of fresh vegetables and also the protein items, and a little bit more flexibility in those items as well, and I think that's bringing the participation rate up. So my question is kind of twofold. One is to maybe get a better sense of those schools at some point in advance of how we compare to them in terms of the quality of that food, because I think there's an aspect of is not just that it's 3 years and we should raise the prices, we do that every 3 years, but it's because we are bringing in, fresher foods, and some of that fresher food has a cost associated with it, so you're actually getting, more for your money now, and that's costing more, so hence that cost needs to be borne. And I think that the price is somewhat inelastic also. I don't think that the reason why, students are or not participating in a lunch program is because the cost of the lunch is probably more for the taste and what they like in the lunch. And that's why our participation is going up. So that would be my one comment, and then to follow up with that is the a la carte aspect. I didn't see if you were thinking of raising the a la carte price as well, but that instead of just doing one increase, if we should consider doing both of those.
A la carte, anything a la carte we can raise as we see fit to raise it. The things the school committee needs to decide on are the price of lunch, the main meal of the day, what used to be the type A lunch, and the cost of milk. Those are the two things that are in your hands. So we did take Advocate's advice, and anything we're selling a la carte, we're working on a 30% food cost. So, we're making 70% of that, well, not 70%, but we are upcharging it another 70%. And that's, most of the items are bagged or packaged, or water, or polar seltzer, or baked chips, or sunflower seeds, any number of things. So those, we just watch their price, and every year I will go through and raise if they have gone up in cost, or so that is happening. It was happening even before Advocate, but there aren't many that are using a 30% food cost. They're not going quite that high, but it has really helped us. So I feel that it's something that was warranted and we need to do. Particularly here at the region, we sell more a la carte than we do lunch, and that's due to the fact we have a high school AM snack. So the kids, it was 600 or so kids come down for a snack, 15-minute break in the morning. So that really changes what we're looking at for a la carte money. So, trying to see if I can see it here. Yeah, as you can see it so far this year, the reimbursable meals are 170,000, and the a la carte is 219,000. As Bill said, that and that should be USDA. I'm sorry about that. That's below that. So far, that would have been through February, we've taken in 29,000. And lunch subsidy is roughly 31 cents per meal. Most of it is from the federal government, but I think the state kicks in 6 cents.
Adrian.
So, I just want to understand the cost per meal that you mentioned. I think that's important when we think about what we're going to charge. Because conceptually, to me, I think leaving aside the benefits element of the cost that Bill's talked about, we should try and cover the cost of providing what we provide when we choose the cost of a lunch. And the let's call it $3.10 for an elementary lunch, and $3.25 that you mentioned.
Yes.
Those are not true costs to us, as it were, because the subsidies that you just mentioned are not reflected in that. Is that true?
Yeah, rough. So it would be 31 cents less, roughly.
So 31 cents off that. Okay. And so I'm just trying to understand then the recommendations for the $3 and $3.50 for the new cost. Where did
$3.25.
$3.25?
Yeah, $2.75 and $3.25 if you do the 50 cents.
Correct. The elementary right now is $2.75, and here is $3.25.
Right. So the rise to $3 for the elementary and $3.50 for the regional. I'm just trying to understand where where the thinking was to come up with those numbers?
Um,
When either the subsidy cost or the cost stripped out sort of slightly off that?
In terms, I didn't take it down that far, to be honest, but we, any given year, I walked in the door this year and I had a condenser go on one of my freezers. Right off the bat, $7,000 I've spent without even selling a lunch. We pay for purchase new equipment when equipment dies. Food service equipment is costly. We bought a new POS system at all 3 districts this year.
But does that, is correct from just, does that come out of a different line?
No.
That's in this.
The region did pay, it didn't go through the region, but it went through the
Okay. Right. So I'm now understanding a little bit better, thank you.
You're welcome.
There's more in there than just the food. Yeah.
Yes, we pay for an equipment, a chemical service to come in, they train. and
Thank you. Yeah.
Labor.
Got it.
The other piece of that, Adrian, is that there's some anecdotal thinking that is part of the recommendation. Because I think there's a fine line between the ability to raise the cost of a lunch and continue to, and be able to continue to improve the quality of what's being served, and the desire to, where we can, increase the participation rate. So there's a balance there. We don't want to raise the lunch prices so much that, the participation rate will be impacted. So the recommendation to go to 25-cent increase across all 3 levels instead of the 50 cents, that was part of the thinking.
I definitely agree with that you walk a fine line that.
The last comment I'll just add, and then I'll see the last comment I'll just add is, please don't, as a group, let's think we should only come back to this every 3 or 4 years, because if food prices move or if other needs are strong, it should be an active discussion.
More frequent and smaller increases or less infrequent large increases.
I have too many points.
You get one.
Remind me, I should
What
know,
time
but I don't. How long do students have for lunch? Between when they get out of a class and
20
when they are
minutes.
due in the next class?
22 to 25 minutes.
I think fundamentally that's a problem. I don't know how to solve it. I don't know if it's soluble. I expect to find it's true at every school level. Fundamentally, it's a problem. I know kids eat fast, but it gets to the idea of what do we think lunch. What's worse? Is worse.
Much less.
Smaller stomachs to fill. Who cares? But it gets to the point of what are we doing? Why do we think it's important to offer lunch? Yeah, I understand legally we have to, but presumably that's not really why we're doing it. Is it part of the quality of the day that you have some time to eat in a civilized way among your civilized, one hopes, peers, without feeling as though you have to be looking at your watch all the time? I used to teach in a school in which we had half an hour, and I was constantly looking at my watch, and I was constantly, in fact, indigested as a result. So I think that's something actually we ought to be taking seriously. All the points. I have no problem whatsoever with a large price increase. In fact, a significantly bigger price increase than we're looking at here, if it means we can offer better food. It doesn't really bother me that we would cause people to not eat at our establishment, because they have a perfectly good option, which is to bring their own food from home. You just raise the price until you actually are running the operation you want. And if people don't want to participate, that's fine. We are not a profit-making operation over there. We're offering a service. Let's offer the service we actually want to offer, and then people can do it if they want. I'll make one more point, which is just that I do think that having funding a fund that serves as essentially the E&D of food service operation is a good idea. I think it's a good idea if you want to offer a meal service that you actually have the ability to replace equipment and to upgrade equipment without the kind of penny pinching that I think we've been doing. I think fundamentally, I think we should stop thinking of food service as a profit-making or even a break-even operation. It's should be a part of our school system in the same way that sports is, in the same way that extracurriculars, in the same way that AP is. It serves a function. We should just define what that function is, decide how much it costs, and build it into the budget.
So I was going to see, I wanted to echo Janelle's point that I do think that anecdotally, better food requires more labor, more refrigeration than our capacity now, more hot wells than we have the capacity for right now. As Carolyn's point, more cold wells, which we have the capacity for. So better food that I think if we're thinking in terms of challenge success and how we want to really think of these children holistically, nutrition is part of it. And it's an important part for this community in particular. I think we're very aware of the food that our children have. And so it does cost more money. And I do think that it's part of our mission, as Richard was saying. It's an important aspect of what we offer at the schools. So I think I wouldn't go so far as to say, carte blanche, but I do think that the 25 cents that they're asking for is very reasonable under the circumstances.
Really quickly, I think that we're missing the point. Part of the point, for at least the region, is that the kids can't. It's partly the time, which you did mention, but there's not places for them to sit. If you come at lunchtime in the high school, they're everywhere in the back halls and like.
That's because they want to be.
Partly because they want to, but partly because they feel that there's a need. It's not the conducive atmosphere for them. There are kids who would buy if they felt that they had the time and the place then to eat that was close by. But if they're going to eat the far side because there's not enough, they feel like there's not enough space because this group's taking over all these tables.
You're suggesting a sit-in fee?
I'm just saying that we need to think about it holistically, that I think that just thinking about providing the food is only going to address part of the issue. If we really want to increase participation, we've got to look at the whole setup and where they're able to eat, and as teenagers, what's important to them during that time. Richard commented about is.
So I was just going to say that, we've got a long agenda, and I think all of these are good points, but the question is, should we raise lunch by 25 cents? So I think the feedback has said is that we're giving to the superintendent is that as he's looking at this and thinking about it this summer to bring something to the capital subcommittee, that we are all supportive of some sort of overhaul of what's going on with the school bond program, with the idea that it might increase participation, which then would, increase our bottom line on this. But for tonight, can we go ahead and vote on the 25 cents?
It's board by board.
Yeah.
Right. So, did you make your motion?
I'm making a motion that we, sorry, that's Dana, by the way. That we accept the 25 cent increase. So do I do it for just the
region?
At the region for the school lunch program.
Second.
Do you have a motion from Dover to increase the price 25 cents? It should.
So moved.
Second. Do a motion from Sherborn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any other discussion before we take votes?
Are you going to vote on the milk at the same time or not?
There's no proposal.
You're not proposing, are you proposing nothing?
I would propose, because it has gone up every year for the past 3 years, I would, a 10 cent would be very helpful.
What is milk now?
Let's just, since we already have a motion on
Yes,
the
can we-
table, we'll work our way through that one.
Thank you.
So what I would, I guess, put out there for the region is what would be the impact, either favorably or negatively, in 50 cents, and trying to, again, meet the needs quality and try to pull students back in. That works.
I don't know that I don't know that we're going to be talking about more having capital, in the capital committee talk about Janelle's equipment and such. And so that's another point that I don't know that we need to go that far quite yet until we know we have a more comprehensive plan.
But in the short term, would that additional revenue allow you to upgrade on the product that you're purchasing?
I would suggest the market won't bear it.
I also think that, I'm not sure, and just based on what I heard about earlier today was going on, I don't know that we necessarily need the swoosh change in what we're serving. I'm not sure that's really the issue. I think given that Bill recommended 25 cents, I feel like I'd have to respect the recommendation.
Our utilization is, what, 50%?
It's less, but I'm not sure it's because of the quality of the food. I think we don't have enough data on what's driving it, and I hesitate to quote a 50% increase without that information.
Then we should really figure out, before we get deeper into capital and things like that, we need to understand why people aren't buying, or even if there's even a need. Maybe we're trying to create a solution for something that
They
kids
just
just
don't
want a
want.
round
The
bag.
kids
They'd
don't want.
rather have whatever they can get the parents to
Well, I
provide
think
them.
other schools are very
Healthy or
helpful.
not healthy.
I think looking at other schools is helpful because
Just so we're, I think it's 49% at both elementaries right now and 44% in the region. I believe that the past couple of months.
All in favor? All opposed?
Dover, all in favor? Sherwood? Okay, so do you want to do something?
So,
Yeah, there isn't a formal proposal in front of you, and it was just something that had recently come up.
It's also on your pricing, guidance for milk prices, you see, again, named lower.
so for the region, is there a motion to raise milk prices by 10 cents?
How much is milk cane?
If the region is 60, if the elementary is 50.
And that is if you buy it on cart. It comes with
Correct,
the
it comes with the meals, correct.
Is it easier to go to 75?
I thought à la carte was 30% over, so isn't that within your
Because
guidelines?
I don't have control over that price.
Oh, I see.
So do we have a motion to raise 10 cents? Second.
So how much would it be, 70 cents then? From this?
Do we have a second? I would second.
Bill, you have a problem?
No, I'm uncomfortable in an ad hoc way putting a proposal on the table.
Me too.
I would suggest that we take this up at the June joint meeting. I don't think that timing impacts, the ability to raise the cost of milk by 10 cents. But it will give us more of an opportunity to formally come back to you with a recommendation and perhaps some additional information related to milk prices.
I'm very active.
I do commend your willingness to take that on.
Is there anything else you want to ask? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So moving on to agenda item number 4, district goals.
Thank you. In your packet was a cover memo from me just describing where we're at with the current district goals. You've been provided with a report that gives you the status of that. This is really a follow-up from the February meeting. And then also in the cover memo, I speak very briefly to planning for 2016-17. I think I've described in the memo what my thinking is at this point. This is something the leadership team will talk about over the course of the next 2 or 3 meetings. And for next year's goals, our recommendation is that we will come to each of the individual committees at the June meetings with drafts to get feedback, and then come back with a final proposal for discussion and action at the joint meeting in June. So that's related to the planning for next year. In the meantime, I think Karen would like to just briefly make some comments about where we are at this point in the school year for the goals.
Certainly, I know Ms. I've been before you, as has the entire leadership team, to talk about how we have progressed with the goals over the past year. But I think framing it under what's the change in practice, what's the change in procedure, and what's the impact on curriculum and planning. So just briefly, when you look at challenge success, some of the practices that have been changed, and I'm not naming them all, but the 6:30 start for the school evening performances, 2.5-hour limit to some of the sports performances, the drama starting at 6:30, the homework-free weekends, those types of things. The change in practices, looking at how we discuss with children what homework means, and how that it has an impact across all K-12 because it's happening and with the research happening. And curriculum and planning, the resiliency training, I think that our educators participated in has then transitioned to our students because there's a lot happening in the classroom to ensure that we're mindful of what students are doing and how they're reacting to what's happening. So you can see so much happening there. I don't need to go through it all, but I thought it was important that we just take stock at this time and look at it. When you look at the DS Professional Growth and Evaluation System for administrators and educators, I think it's an important part of our professional practice, but a lot has happened. We've clarified expectations, we've looked at the common measures, it's become a part of our practice. The qualified peer observers, we're in our 2nd year of training, they're off and running, they're ready, the peer conversations are just exemplary. And I think the model that we're using with the mini observations and short effective feedback for our educators informs instruction. So that's a great portion of where we are. We will implement the student and staff feedback surveys. They're underway at the elementary level and at the end of May in the high school levels. And then I think the most important for me is the curriculum revision. I am so jazzed by the science standards. I mean, I'm a curriculum geek, I do that all along. But the work that has happened at the elementary level for the focus of inquiry, the work that's happening at the middle school level to look at earth, physical, and life science, they've actually plotted out the units of study. It's just amazing. And I will come before you next month. We are going to, as a district, institute a curriculum revision cycle, a curriculum review cycle, excuse me. And I'll bring that forward to you at the next school committee meeting. So that's just a touchstone. There's so much here. If there's anything in particular I can respond to, it was a lot. And as we reflected on it, and I worked with the administrators and Bill to think about how we operationalize all this. So you see some of it's completed, some of it's partially completed, some of it's underway. But please, if there's anything in particular.
I just had a question about the middle school reading and assessing that. Where does Ann Larson from Landmark fit into that, or does she?
She does.
Oh, okay.
Actually,
So
yeah.
exactly what's our contract still with her, and where do we stand in the whole scheme of what we have envisioned for her relationship with middle school?
She will continue with us for 1 more year, and Larson is doing language-based strategies with our educators. But the close reading is part of the Common Core State Standards. Plus, it's applied to science, social studies, art, all of those. And you look at signposts, how students compare and contrast, how they make meaning from the text. So that's what the close reading work was this year. I was with the middle school educators today, ELA and special ed, and they were doing a training on an assessment that grew out of the need to think about how do we provide close reading strategies to students, how do we assess what they're doing. So everyone will be doing the foundations and benchmark assessment with some of those kids. So you can see how it grows organically. Our work with Ann Larson, she is one of the few professional developers I have ever worked with, who can take all of those things. You mentioned close reading to her, she incorporates it in the language-based strategy. You mentioned we need to look at assessments, the SRI, she incorporates that in her work with our educators. So that will continue. She's worked 6th, 7th, and 8th. So she will work with us next year, a series of probably 7, 8, 9, 10 days, we aren't quite sure. And it's paid through the federal grant. So we'll continue with her. And I see us sewing that up and then using the train-the-trainer model going forward.
Thank you. One area that has been talked about for a little bit, Karen, is the transitional therapeutic program. And I know it's not just our district, pediatricians across the country, all kinds of organizations are talking about what do we do to help support kids get back to school for whatever reason that they were out. And I noticed it says apply for grant April 2017, and I'm thinking, okay, we're waiting another year. Will we be hearing some short-term steps that we can do here at DS without an official transitional program?
Yes. Yes, we actually met as a session yesterday with the school adjustment counselor from the high school, director of guidance, and Bill, myself, John, and Terry Green to talk about our next steps. I think this year was our year of research, recognizing that there are people at the high school who are sure that our students assimilate themselves back in, but we can do a better job. So that's what this research is, and we visited Weston, we visited Wellesley, we attended that the summit, and have gotten some great information, but we need more time to gather data on the students for whom this program would benefit, but also to look at the infrastructure at the high school and how to implement a program such as this. Anything to add?
I think that there's been some exciting work done the last few months here around really coming to an understanding after visiting some of the schools of what their programs are about. And what we've learned is that the programs are unique at each district, because each district has some different needs. The other thing we've learned is that there are a couple of groups out there that are coordinating and acting like a consortium in bringing these schools that have either developed these programs and have been running them for a while or in the process of planning these programs. So we've recently become engaged, with that group. In all the instances that we've looked at, there's a considerable cost to implementing a program in terms of staff, and typically to start, it's a couple of staff. So what our plans are for next year is to try to take pieces from the programs that we visited and a few more that we will be visiting, and to see if in an ad hoc way going through the year, we can start developing some of the practices and some of the protocols. And I would imagine that I'm feeling confident that when it comes budget time in the fall, we'll be coming forward with some proposals to formally implement a program and include in the budget development process what we feel that the cost will be.
Right, and I imagine, Bill, that over time, too, if we can get the kids back to school and getting here more on a regular basis, then we're spending less on private tutoring and all the other supports that are there to help the kids transition back. So there's that balance.
There will be some balance there. There'll be an
expenditure.
opportunity to reallocate, we believe, resources that we currently do have available to us.
Yeah.
We believe that we stand a pretty good chance of receiving a grant for one of the staff positions for a period of 3 years. And that the way the grant has been working is that fully funded the first year, partially funded year 2, the district would have to pick up the remaining cost. So incrementally, we would, through the grant, phase in one of those 2 positions. And that's what a number of the other schools that we've visited have been able to do.
Thank you.
Can I just great to read all the challenge success points. I thought really very inspiring. On the no homework weekends at the region, just looking at the timing that was selected of the 2 weekends, one's at about day 55 and one's at about day 90 or whatever. I just wondered if there was any thought that the second half of the academic year was gapingly expectant for a third weekend.
Is there only one official one at the high school Thanksgiving? The other one is, no,
It's January.
no. I don't think that's an official one. It's
Oh,
just
it's-
one.
So
It's just the weekend after mid-years. There's less homework, but
Yes.
it's not.
So
That would be part of the leadership team discussion going
Yes,
forward. for next year.
it just particularly that if it successful and of value. Just struck me
It's
that
a week-long vacation.
I was going to point that out, but a lot of times there's a lot of homework during those vacations, so my question was, what does the homework look like during those vacations on an average, you know?
Just a thought, just a thought for next time.
There's policy in there.
Any,
On the third item, in outcomes under joint success, I did not see the engagement plans attached.
Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, I'm sorry. I can actually forward those electronically.
And for the challenge success team, are they at the point where, in a sense, have a compass around what we're gonna see different with our kids who are being successful in implementing this? Kind of I know we're only in year 2 of it, but as we move into the third year, if you know, conversations like that are being had, and how we see that all this activity is having, fundamental difference.
We'll actually do the Metro West Healthcare Survey again in another year. But in between, Stan DS has done a survey on sort of student attitudes. I think in this next year coming up, we're still in the implementation stage at the region for faculty and families, and bringing students in this upcoming year, mostly through the specific activities, the West kind of sports, those things will continue. I think the subsequent year, you'll see more student engagement and emphasis. At the elementary level, this is their first year for Challenge Success, so you start to see more faculty and family engagement in the years to come. But a lot has been accomplished. So I don't know that we'll be able to see the broadened effects. And I think Stanford would tell you the same thing after 4 or 5 years.
questions on the goals? Karen? Bill, Director of Special Education Search Process.
Thank you. As everyone knows, Terry Green has indicated that she'll be resigning from her position as Special Education Director at the end of the school year. She has accepted a position as the Special Education Director for the TECA Virtual Learning School District. Virtual School 102 in Massachusetts. It is actually its own school district. So we are planning on moving forward to find her replacement. In your packet, there's a cover memo which has a recommendation for the school committee to establish a salary range for this position for next year. Also enclosed is a memo that outlines the Director of Special Education search process. I think the process is similar to how other major administrative positions have been filled in the past. I think there's a question about what the practice has been previously in terms of the number of school committee members involved on the committee search advisory committee, so we can certainly talk about that. The search process that I've outlined, I will tell you, I think is aggressive in terms of the timeline, but I think it's important for us to really start to move forward on that. And so that's for your information as well. In addition to the recommendation for salary range, I provided for you some comparative salaries from tech education collaborative members, as well as some other districts that are similar in size, and districts that, again, we regularly compare ourselves to. And it was this data that established for me the recommendation for the salary range. And last, there is also a job description that is attached, and there are some edits that brought to my attention, some edits that have to be made to this job description because there's a difference. When you get to physical demands and the work environment, that's boilerplate language for all of our job descriptions, but it has a different position there, so we'll edit that and insert special education administrators position in that. But the important pieces of the job description, the essential duties and responsibilities and qualifications are directly related to this position.
Do we have any idea what the pool is like for this position?
It's been my experience the last 3 years. In Winchester, I had to go out twice to find a replacement for this position. There aren't a lot of people out there who are interested in being in special education.
So what actually of this is under our purview? Just the salary range, if it's above what we have been paying?
Well,
I mean, do we really need to put it?
so I think it's good practice for the school committees when you have a vacancy for a major administrative position to establish a salary range. That range will be used by the superintendent when negotiating a contract with the successful candidate. The school committee's responsibility for establishing the pieces of an employment contract have to do with the financial aspects of that contract, so that's within the school committee's responsibility. So that's why we want you to establish a salary range. And then the other responsibility that you have with this position is to actually vote on an appointment. So for this position, the superintendent is responsible to recommend a candidate to the school committees, and it's your responsibility to vote for that position. So there are, as I think people know, there are assistant superintendent positions, director of special education, and the special education administrator position. Along with the superintendent, that school committees actually make the appointment.
And the business manager.
School nurse, the business manager. School nurse is technically school physician.
If the pool is, I just wonder about the salary range. Why put a bottom on how this is going to apply? But that's about at the midpoint. So can you say up to a certain number?
Sure.
And if the pool is then?
Yep.
Go out on a limb here. Why not say 1/4? Understanding the fact that we haven't done a very good job of hiring people lately, and money doesn't equal quality, but if it is that, I mean, it's an important position, and the difference in salary can be made up in the management.
I would not push back if the school committee.
It looks like the whole bottom half of the list there are contiguous communities, and they're all up to 1/4 basically.
Does anyone know why the Concord Carlisle regional person is such a high outlier? Is it to do with the fact they're not a member of a...
They're outliers on everything.
Really?
It was the same with the
So that position in Concord Carlisle, I believe, is a student services administrator
Okay,
position.
thank you.
So they have a few more responsibilities.
I'd support what Greg said.
I had one other question too, is in terms of the contract, can we say up to 3 years instead of 3 years? Again, I wouldn't want to come to a place with just a 1-year contract, but what's the situation where if they kind of don't work out, what do you do?
Yeah, to make the position attractive, standard practice is typically with these kind of positions to offer an initial 3-year contract. I think good candidates will hesitate if there's anything less. That can always be negotiated if we're in a situation where, how do I say this? What I would say is if we're unsure if a candidate can be successful. However, I don't envision myself making a recommendation to you if we have a candidate that I think, there's a question whether they can be successful.
So what's the stopgap? I mean, we can get interim business managers, interim superintendents.
We've had one at the region.
Pardon?
At the region, we had an interim special ed director.
Right, it didn't work out so well.
No, she was good. She was very good.
No,
Yeah.
it was the person who we hired prior to that.
Right. So I mean, if we go through a search and we don't have a qualified candidate or someone that, I'm not comfortable bringing forward to the school committee, then we have the opportunity to bring in an interim person. We have an interim person, and we have another one. So our goal here is to find a suitable candidate that can do the job. Is another possibility in terms of this search is to bring a consultant on board to help us with this. Now, I noticed recently that Andover is looking for, they're calling the position of Student Services Administrator. So they oversee special education and guidance and nursing services. That's what larger districts do. They've contracted with NESDEC to help them in the search. So when I found out about that, I did call NESDEC to inquire about what they were doing with Andover. And in fact, they sent a proposal to us. What they're doing in Andover is they're doing the front end of the process. So they're advertising the position through School Spring, which we would do if we're doing it on our own. They're collecting all of the application materials. They are also using their network of somewhere between 800 and 1,000 contacts that they have, that they send the information out to. Theoretically broadening, the search. I haven't made any commitment, and I decided, not bringing it forward to you.
And that's 15 or 20 grand probably.
It's $2,850.
$2,800?
$2,850. Or maybe 28, 25.
But you did not get the impression that they would be actively, not phone screening, but just prospecting for you above and beyond direct mail?
Well, my sense is that if we wanted to do this, if we wanted to do this, one benefit might be that they're well ahead of our timeline in Andover, for example. So they would know candidates who are interested, who are out there candidating, or at least interested in moving on. And I think that that would be helpful to us because they could direct them to our search as well. But, I think that, again, the benefit that I see, if there is, and what's this worth, I really can't tell you. But, the people who are actively looking, School Spring is, they've got their account set up, so they're getting dinged as soon as a position is being posted. So people who are actively looking, they'll know about our position. People who may only be looking in the area
north of Boston, i.e. Andover, they may learn about it through some contact with NESDEC. I have already put together a list based on districts that are hiring new superintendents, and thinking perhaps someone in the position might be looking to move on. So regardless, I intend to put together a process where we are doing some active recruiting ourselves.
Does anybody have any pushback on it? It seems like putting a bigger number in there would do more to get activity. Does anybody have any pushback on that?
You mean on 140, you mean?
Yeah.
You want to pay them?
Yeah, also.
They're good enough.
When you go to negotiate, you have the number that they're at. And I think usually you gauge it, so if you have a candidate that's at 120, you may not go to 140, but if a candidate's at 135, then yeah, that basically predicates you to go to 140 if they're in the finals. I think it's the range, you bump up the range so that you might get more people at least getting their resume and offer.
Hence the
I think that's,
up to.
yeah.
So
Well, we don't always put a dollar salary range in our ads that usually say competitive.
Well, why not? I mean, that would get that would do it for me. But I'm not normal.
what are we looking for in terms of motion now? I don't want to get granular into how to structure a search.
Giving guidance, I guess, up to the number, because we've already got 132,000 in the budget, so.
I mean, if we go to 140, it puts us in top percentile.
But we don't have to.
Well, it doesn't mean we're getting in the lead.
It makes us very competitive, and if you look at some of the schools in this list where we have some salaries potentially in there anyways, there's some pretty good peers that we might be able to look at someone who's already qualified and might be looking to make a move.
So do we say 120
You
to
gotta keep in
140
mind, these
commensurate
are
with?
current year salaries, each of these are going to go up 2% next year anyway, so
$140
140 is not going to be that high.
And would you have any sense of the workload here? I mean, some of these schools are much larger. It seems like the workload, it would just be, this would be one area where it's pretty clear about the workload. Maybe it's too high everywhere, but do you have any sense of how we would compare to some of these other places? Would somebody move just to have a more manageable workload?
So our special education numbers are, are near the state average. So we don't have an inordinate number, we don't have a number that's much less, but when we put all the numbers together, they're just short of state average.
Percentage basis.
Percentage basis.
But that could be a low absolute number.
Right, so I think that there may be some candidates who are working in a larger district. They see that the Dover-Sherborn School District is looking for a director. I think that the Dover-Sherborn District has cachet out there. I think that candidate will be, I think their interest would be piqued, if you will.
Is it a liability for us that we have interim superintendent?
Especially in kids.
So they talk to it could be a factor for some people, but I think the biggest factor, frankly, will be Dover-Sherborn. And I know that there was some concern around the superintendent search that we just did. But I have to tell you, where I go and the people I talk to, when people think about Dover-Sherborn, it's in a very, very positive way. People have positive feelings about Dover-Sherborn. They hear a lot of positive things. So I'm hoping that, given that we are a smaller district compared to the communities, a lot of communities that we compare ourselves to, that it may open up the opportunity. We may have people who we're not currently thinking about moving, but may consider moving if they see this vacancy.
Ready for a motion?
And is there?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I make a motion. I move we approve of 2016-17 salary for this position of up to 140.
Is this by region or?
Yeah, it's divided by, so same, Dover, same motion, or no second? Sherborn, same motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor for the region? Oh, we didn't, I'm sorry, we did not ask for one discussion.
All in favor? Commander Sherborn?
So before we move off this, I asked a question about the committee thing.
Yes, so let's clarify that.
We have a membership here of 2 school committee members. We're 3 separate entities making our own vote to appoint someone. Do we need 3 school committee members on that committee?
I'll just say my sort of take on that, is that all the committee members will have an opportunity to sit down and interview the 2 finalists and provide feedback. So if there's any kind of efficiency in all the time, because I know everyone's been taxed this year, if things to do with the elementary wanted to agree, maybe have a rep and the region have a rep. That's something to think about. So that's why I don't necessarily think we have to jump and have 3 school committee members, but I think the elementary is going to have one for us, so we have to be.
Historically, we would have 4. We would have 1 from the each of the elementary, and a Dover and Sherborn.
Do you have?
Yeah.
Maybe you could just have
This is
say,
good.
2 from the region, 1 from
Yeah.
Sherborn, or whatever.
Assistance.
Hey, Don, I think that's an excellent idea, and I look forward to discussions on it too.
Well, the issue is that, this is going to get off, so
You need to solve that
we just need to
tonight.
say, so.
Well, I just have to say, I feel odd that we have to vote separately, like we just had to vote each committee separately. It seems odd to not have somebody from one of the committees on the screen.
Honestly, it's
I understand it's just the screening. But if Dover feels willing to.
I don't think it's unreasonable to have a member from each of them. It's just,
Yeah.
you just don't want the committee to be on their own.
Right.
So I know
Right.
my personal.
So
I totally understand.
those who have an interest, email me for the region.
So is that a vote or a consensus?
No, yeah, so what we'll do is if there's someone who's interested in both of the locals, we'll have.
Okay.
So if you're interested,
Email your
Or
chair,
chair
by
now.
what, do you have a dedeline that you want to know from people?
Friday.
No.
Deadline to submit request to the
So April 25th.
so I think we
Can I just, one more thing, before we get off of this too far, I was hoping that we could put on the agenda, maybe in a month, whether we should revisit the NESDEC, because for 2025, it seems like that might be something that we should consider a little bit more carefully. And what I'm thinking is not that the interim superintendent is an issue, but we already have one interim position in Dover. And I do think this position, we've had some ups and downs in the past, might just be one of these positions where it's worth it. It's that hard to hire that it might, for the 2025, I was just wondering if that's something that we should be looking at another month based on what you're getting back in.
The deadline perhaps is the 25th.
Oh, okay.
Too late to come back and talk about it. It's that
So I just on that, I have some sympathy with what Laura said. I'd be more willing rather to say one way or the other to give the superintendent guidance that, and to, if we need to vote for that amount to give him the option of using that should he think in his dealings with it that it's needed. Because especially working on a very similar search, the intelligence gathered for that for relatively very little money. I'd be willing to lead by him on the benefit of that rather than make it ourselves.
Is there any other search insiders who were thinking about that?
Well,
you know, for a position like this, I have always typically done an ad in the Boston Globe. And I know.
Which really no one
And,
does anymore.
and there are many reasons for that. I think that potential candidates, even if they're not thinking of moving, my experience is that people in these positions are always looking at the Boston Globe. Even with the advent the last 2 or 3 years of School Spring really becoming, or one of its competitors, the place where everybody goes. In addition to that, it's also widely viewed outside of Massachusetts through their online component. But the problem with the Globe is that one-time ad, along with an online advertisement, is going to cost $3,600 to $3,700. So if you weigh that against, you know, the NESDEC proposal is actually $2,925. You know, NESDEC is using their network. I'll leave it at that. If there was a proposal to give the superintendent the ability to enter into a contract up to $2,925 with NESDEC, based on some further conversations I have with them, I want to have a specific conversation with Art Betancourt around how active, for this cost, how active would they be in perhaps recruiting candidates? And if the answer is, for that amount of money, we can really just put together the flyer, advertise it, and send out our circulars, I'm not sure the money's worth it, frankly. But if they would actively recruit, it may be a benefit.
Or can you get them not to do the front end, we do the front end?
I talked about that. Yeah.
And they won't.
No, but, well, that's what the
Oh, that-
proposal was. But I will have that, I can have that conversation again with them. See, I do like to control the application materials. I would prefer that we control those here. Under this proposal, they all go there, they keep track of them, and they hand the materials over to us. But,
I just feel like since they're doing another search, it might be they might be looking over, because there's 2 searches out there, they might come across names that we might not.
So do we need a motion to control the option list?
And it would be split 3 ways.
And shape it however things it works best.
You gotta be paid for these other things.
Salary increase. So do we have a motion to authorize Bill to spend up to, say, $3,000 for search expenses?
Do you have a motion?
Second.
So moved.
Second.
And the region? I'm gonna abstain.
She looked up. Getting to that point.
You can ask either from Bill or the committees on the search.
So Terry's going off to a distinctly new opportunity. Yes, fair to say. Okay, hopefully that can be spot as well.
Is that the tech here, or is that the one in Greenfield, or?
Yes, it's tech.
It's tech, okay.
It's text first.
We're just throwing money your way at this tonight. And we're not even asking for it.
Policy.
Okay, so that's the exciting part of the
Our favorite part of the
We're
year.
not costing you money.
All right.
So I'm going to turn this over to Claire to walk us through our end.
All right, I guess it's me, I thought it was gonna be Ann. So we had policies in our packet that were the first reading at the last joint meeting, student restraint and bullying.
No, that's first.
First reading. So should we do the easiest and the second reading first? Which is student tobacco use, staff tobacco use, and laws. Before we get there, Carolyn, did you have comments?
On that one, I think that would be for all of you, lots of comments.
On which one?
But on the second reading, I don't have a comment on it. Under school's wellness program, it says the school requires students to enroll in physical, and health education. So it probably should be stricken in.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay.
I think
So any other comments on this policy that first reading, which Janine will approve?
the tobacco one,
Which
Students or staff?
tobacco used by students and by staff, I think, my comment applies to both, actually. And that is, it says, smoking, chewing, or other tobacco products, and then it's got comma, e-cigarettes, vaporizers by staff, students, and members. If this is student, should it be H or D staff? But more importantly, I don't know a whole lot about e-cigarettes and vaporizing, but I did read a couple of articles on it, and there was this discussion about different things that can be put into the liquids that are vaporized that can be ingested, and they're not always tobacco products. So does that need to be spelled out?
Well, forms of tobacco,
Common e-cigarettes and vaporizer. I'm not saying you're using tobacco.
So those products are used with an e-cigarette or a vaporizer.
So they put it inside, but it may not contain tobacco or nicotine. It could contain flavored scented water, for example, and one might argue that it's not a tobacco product, it's scented water. Or it could be something other than scented water, scented water or something else.
Those products are only, have to be used with a vaporizer.
Understand?
Right. But a vaporizer is not
So you just get rid of so you can't use e-cigarette or vaporizer.
No, that's what we're adding.
Alright.
It is safe.
But if you put the tobacco products at the end of the list, then it's clearer.
That's
So
right.
actually, maybe if it's not called tobacco use.
Yeah, the title is called tobacco.
I think that's where.
Oh, there you go.
So what do we call it?
So we're trying to leave open the idea that someone would use a vaporizer for a non-tobacco product.
Yes, absolutely.
And it could be argued not to be punished because it was tobacco.
But or are we saying you are punished because? Yeah, with vaporizers,
Yes.
it's the way it's vaporizers.
It says, other use of
Vaping.
vaporizers shall be banned from all schools. I mean, it's quite clear that banning vaporizers are not.
I agree, I think it's the title.
Why don't you just change the title to use of tobacco and use of vaporizers and tobacco products?
Or just tobacco, e-cigarette, vaporizer.
Vaporizer used
That's
by
it.
students.
Okay, I agree with that, yep.
So we're saying that regardless of what's in the vaporizer.
Right, you can't.
Yeah, I would really put tobacco at the end of it, to me, for sure.
Right.
Actually, there was a case in the news today or yesterday that some kids on a school bus, they actually didn't use vaporizer, but they actually ate a little capsule of one of those liquids and they ended up in the hospital.
Yes.
It doesn't even have to be a vaporizer, it's whatever
You say don't be stupid.
goes in, yeah.
Well, I think we discussed that title section. Anything else on the three that are up for final vote? Good. Let's get before Laura again. Laura's not having.
Noted.
She'll stay on.
No, it's actually, I'm confused by it, actually.
So.
So, do we want to have the chair's call for motion?
Yes. And we'll do these all, we'll do them all in one vote?
Yes.
Okay. So Dover, do I have a motion to approve the student new title of use and the staff new title of use? I think that we have to fight and wellness policies.
So moved. Second.
Region, may I have a motion?
Someone?
Any discussion?
So all in favor? Against? Alright, Sherman in favor? Again?
And Region, in favor? And opposed?
So tonight in your packet is a first reading on student restraint and bullying prohibition policy.
The student restraint should have a copy because we did make changes from, if you're looking at the packet online, it's right, but if you printed the packet before this morning. So it's a
Bill heard it out.
copy of what it really was like. It's really, the change was in red, but really, the red change is really the way it was before, we just put the original policy back in place of what we had.
We're gonna take that out if we're gonna have it reference
Yeah.
policy. And the policy subcommittee had some thoughts on bullying prohibition. One is the headmasters have a look at the new material because some of this material is also in their handbooks. So we would just like to make sure we're all on the same page.
So they are aware of and have copies of the new, the bullying prevention implementation plan that was changed last April.
Right.
Do they
But there are
have this?
some differences, right. Okay.
No, I'm just.
Okay. So this came to us from Jonestown through your
Yes,
office.
that's right.
So we would ask that you share that with the headmasters and that they have a look at that. And if they have any feedback for us,
Yes.
we would love to hear it.
Do we have that same issue in the elementary school?
We don't have our taxes as it is, I think, right in the handbooks. But we'll share with the whole, share with all of them.
So what changed?
Restraint? Sure.
So I was not crazy about, this whole 2 pages that was changed. And then all of a sudden you have this paragraph about prevention of dangerous behavior, which first of all, I feel like I'm not sure I was talking about suicide. And I feel this is very vague, thing about how the public schools will run children as opposed to develop methods for preventing suicide. It makes no sense. First of all, I'm not even sure what we're even going to do and why that's in our strength. So it just felt, we're chugging along with language that I thought was great. When we're finished with this, and all of a sudden, we're supposed to come up with a plan for preventing self-injury and suicide.
So you might know that.
How did that get in?
So, I mean.
You were on this committee.
I was on this committee, I've been on it for a long time.
It's from that version?
Yeah,
We didn't
I have no
it, yeah.
All right, and I would like then, I personally, if I apparently put it in, make that one, I would be in favor of striking it, because I don't feel like it belongs there, I feel like it's so vague, and I feel like it's actually helpful, we really haven't done
Can you
it.
draw us in the specific what section?
Last page, top paragraph.
This is also, policies worked on by our legal counsel.
So can we go back to her and ask her if there's any reason why we can't strike that paragraph unless we go down and like put it in there? I just don't think it fits, and I feel like it's actually enforceable.
So we can take in that whole section or just?
Just
section
that
specific?
last
That strengthens our liability. If we did have an issue, then they could come back and prove that
So
we
you
didn't
didn't-
do this because we really don't have policies.
If it should be there, it should be more than 4 lines. And so if council says we really need it there, then it needs to be expanded and discussed and stuff.
If I get development, I think
It's actually a different section in the restraint.
Correct.
It's a totally, so can we ask Joan if there's any reason why we can't take that out?
Is it the whole paragraph of policy, or is it just this?
Yeah, the whole section.
Because I understand the idea that preventing student violence, part of the reason for restraint is to prevent
Or
student violence or self-injuring behavior. So I understand why that's included. But that, I think I see why that's included, but I kind of agree with you now, I hadn't really noticed, but.
Why it's suicide.
Suicide. It really doesn't. I mean, if you look at the purpose of this policy, that every student should be free from the unlawful use of physical restraint. That's the purpose of this policy. It just doesn't work. It may belong somewhere else.
I would be in favor of striking
Well, what happens if we develop a method, and one of the methods in one of these situations does involve restraint? We're going to need to. No, but it seems like it should be. I think that paragraph, a method that's escalating to restraint, so I think that's why it belongs in.
The use of restraint will be used when the student's behavior imposes a threat of assault or imminent serious physical harm to self or others.
Is this specific to restraint and not behavior? I think what we're looking at is just a small section of a larger component.
I think we need some guidance from legal counsel first to clarify why that's there. The school committees have long been required to have a physical restraint policy. This change is really the result of legislation that was passed that dramatically changed restraint regulations. So I'm confused about that as well in terms of this piece. So perhaps the best way to move forward is to we'll have a conversation with Joan and clarify whether that is actually required by the new regulations or perhaps something else.
So just sort of a clarification on the policy committee, we almost never have, we're given boilerplates out of mass or your policy is the boilerplate. We tend to cut back, so I'm sure it's not something that we added. It could have been there, although it certainly wasn't.
Is the red out?
Red is the change that we made between the packet and this copy, and if you remember the first.
It adds back in something that was in the original policy
So the
that we
red
have
is
deleted.
exactly what was in the original. We highlighted in red, so you can see that we took out. It said, before it says all complaints refer to section KE.
Yeah.
Of our policy that became too complicated to maneuver, so we went back and just put the complaint process in the mailbox.
And is that standard practice that the first direct line of communication would be to the director of special education? It's kind of assuming that the issue is stemming from a special education student within the special education purview. Is that a fair assumption? I don't know.
I think it's because that's the question to use the senior trained in restraint and more
Again, this is first read, so if you have anything else, feel free to send it to your policy rep. Because in a second read will be coming to the June meeting.
Okay, so just so everybody goes to bowling at the same time. So if the couple of things that we wanted to do, bullying had come to us. We wanted to compare it to the MASCs. There are sections where you'll read, some of the information could be trimmed down and it's repetitive. And then to get the input of the headmasters on the new information that's in there. Okay?
All right, under vulnerable students, so,
I had an issue with
okay,
that.
so, there's probably just a comment, I think actually was directing, it says, when the IEP change determines the student has a disability that affects social skills development, or the student may participate in, or is vulnerable to bullying. So that clause, or the student may participate in, looks like it was left hanging on something else, it doesn't actually make sense in the sentence.
When the IEP determines that the student participates in probably many different participates in the ability to.
So the may participate in, is strictly what it said.
So this should probably be when the student participates in this participation.
And then from a substantive perspective, the last line says, develop the student's skills and proficiencies to avoid and respond to bullying, harassment, or teaching. And then I feel like the avoid, and then in the next paragraph, in the bottom sentence, the word prevent, almost implies that it's the responsibility of the student to be avoiding or preventing the bullying, as opposed to the responsibility of the person bullying to stop bullying. And the language that the student's skills are supposed to develop to avoid bullying places the onus on the victim, as opposed to placing the onus on the school to be doing something about the bullying.
I had a question.
And the same is true in the second paragraph, the last line where it says, provide them with the skills, knowledge, and strategies needed to prevent or respond to bullying or harassment. It sort of implies that if somebody just worked hard enough, they could prevent bullying, as opposed to.
Well, and also if we're banning or prohibiting bullying, why are we teaching you how to deal with it?
Right, or even just like.
It's a reason we have law, you know. Come on, it's a self-defense. You're not supposed to have to do it. You have to deal with it.
That's why Carolyn became a lawyer.
This is where it'll be helpful to compare it to the MASC.
Yeah.
From our legal counsel.
I'm not sure avoid is the right word, but I think in fact the sense is, let's teach some coping skills
Well,
because.
I agree with respond to, I would just cut the words to avoid and write to respond to bullying. I think, I would prefer they respond. And the whole second paragraph and the way I a little bit, there's a part of me that's like, I'm not sure we should be, I feel like bullying is bullying, and do we even make it different? I don't know, that's the way we're going to focus on. It's like, okay, it's such a long list, I almost feel like does anybody not fall into this category, first of all? I don't know, I question whether that's really necessary. If somebody's being bullied, it shouldn't happen, period. Does it really matter if it's falling into this incredibly long list of, where you might fall? But in any case, I would, at the very least, I would cut from the top paragraph the words to avoid and in the second paragraph I would cut to prevent or, and just have it be respond in both cases. So we're teaching people to respond, but we're not implying that they're supposed to be, that it's their fault.
Right. And the last paragraph, we're just going to change to the district will collect data as required by the DEC, so that if the DEC changes their mind, we don't need to change our policy.
Good.
So that is our first read on those.
Thank you, policy people.
Yeah, if you think anything else that you looked at, please just make sure that
iPhone.
it's
What? You'll get to that?
Yeah. Those are draft.
Consent agenda?
Okay, so
Are we,
Oh.
That's why I said consent agenda.
sorry.
on the, you have the February 2nd, minutes. Amy, I just have one change on those minutes. Number 7 has been filed with the DSE to allow. So it's just a call right now.
Oh, okay.
other edits or comments on the minutes, February 2nd?
Thank you, Amy.
Move to pass.
Motion to accept the consent agenda from Dover?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Move second.
You need a second.
Second, Amy.
All in favor?
Oh, did I miss?
So do you want to walk through the items that are in communications?
Sure, thank you. First item is the FY17 tech proposed budget. This is really for information. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them for you. The tech board will actually vote to take action at the May 6th meeting. The new, well, it's not new, the recent collaborative boards are required to provide school committees with information on their annual report and the budget. So that's why it's in the packet. The Tech March newsletter is in there for your information. And earlier in the year, when school committees approved the academic calendar to start the school year and the vacation days. This calendar we now fill in all of those other professional development half days.
Which are a lot.
The half days are the same number as were scheduled for this school year. It almost mirrors the current calendar.
Just in terms of the half days, the information gleaned on the survey after the adjusted start, will that be collated by the administration or collated by another body, or how is that going to be decided? Or will it be?
We actually collated the information from the survey market and presented to the leadership team in one of our subsequent meetings to aid insights as to elementary perspective, middle school perspective, and high school perspective. There was a student survey, a staff survey, and a family survey.
And so will that have any bearing on what's in, like, is this draft for now, Karen?
I actually put the placeholder in as I did last year for April, and I put the placeholder in again because this calendar was developed before the actual April 6th date we just got.
So this calendar isn't ready to be released to parents yet?
It has been released to parents.
The half days? So without hearing the feedback?
We were putting the placeholder in as I did last year, so we certainly will be informed by the feedback that we have.
Will we have an opportunity to discuss this further? Will we have an opportunity to discuss that half-day further than just today?
So I think it's fair to say that after reviewing the feedback, we will be coming back with some suggested adjustments.
So we'll have an opportunity
to talk about it, absolutely.
So perhaps wherever it's posted for parents, can that be noted that? Yeah, I just,
Yes,
So this year, I know, I thought we did one as a test. I'm maybe not following why next year you would only do one. It seems like either it has a positive impact and you would move all of them to that policy, or all of them, or at least the region to that policy, and leave the elementary schools.
So we'll find out.
Right. So
Okay, then just, okay.
again, right. So the red highlighting is really, we can consider it a placeholder for now, and that was the original intention.
And are the, when all schools, other than the grade incident, is it generally broken specific? Because one question I had is that this was also discussed in the positive meeting this morning. And informally, what I've heard is high school positive, middle school elementary So one question was, could you do it for just the region and not the elementary? And I know that, I mean, yes, that costs money for buses possibly, but given that there are only, I think, like 4 days a year when all 3 schools have it, is that something to think about, or is the professional development all going together?
So again, I think it's fair to say that leadership team members have individually viewed the survey results, or the survey results have been available for them. We are going to discuss this as a team. We're going to analyze the data, and based on some preliminary viewing and feedback from the data, I think, again, it's fair to say that that for next year, we will see some differences. I just don't want to commit one way or the other.
I just wanted to throw that out there as another, possibility. Could you, like, if it does work for one group and not another, is it possible to have it for one group and not another?
It's pretty clear from the feedback that there are differences.
But you're talking about the Thursday.
No, I'm talking about everything except, because I know that
right,
Thanksgiving,
okay.
I think, is all the teachers together, but I'm saying for the Wednesday.
I got you.
Could do that. And I sent this to the regional committee. Anyway, but as long as Ron and Calendar, I'll share it with you all, that Boston Public Schools have suggested having 2 weeks at Christmas and only 1 week in the spring, getting out earlier, which really, and more schools are thinking about this, for us to think about doing something more in that model, especially since we always have like some days right before their vacation or something. It would be nice if we started a dialogue about, given that other schools in particular, the biggest school system around is talking about this.
Well, they're also
too.
adding early to August, so it may be.
But just, you know, to have a 2-week March break or a 1-week March break instead of in April.
But how do you gain, if you have 2 weeks for Christmas?
Or what
How do
you
you
could do is
gain
1 week
a
in
week?
Christmas
You
and 2
don't,
weeks
still,
in,
you don't.
what you could do is 1 week in Christmas, 2
Eliminate
weeks in March,
vacation.
basically, and then it's the same. And it's so much more efficient, you don't have kids taking off before and after the break, because you have 2 full weeks together, so that there's no way.
So, right, so that'll be discussion before you do next fiscal year 18 calendar.
And it doesn't have to be in terms of easing it in, lots of today, other towns have done it, sometimes Connecticut has done it, sometimes Rhode Island has always done it. You know, it can be written in that it's gonna be 3 years from now, so that everybody has time to adjust, but it really is a better law for me now.
You still wind up with teachers that
Northeast
have.
thing, like, are you
Yeah.
doing anything like regional?
Oh, it's totally
Yes.
different than anyone outside of
Yeah,
New
this is
York,
new
they
made
get their regulation.
You didn't use it, because I've been here long enough.
We should pull out the MOU committee calendar, because it's all in there, we did all that.
I would just throw this out, that with regard to perhaps our next discussion, that it would be an issue in the contract negotiation in terms of changing working conditions.
Oh, absolutely. No, it would have to be part of the contract decision. That's why you would have to do it, you know, it has to be several years after you would do it, it would be part of the contract decision. It would definitely not be easy, but as the mass.
It has to be within the contract.
Learning, there's no question about changing anything in terms of number of days. It's massive.
And I think the reason for the Boston Public Schools has started discussing is because they saw it was a reaction to absence.
So we ready to.
So we,
Yeah,
we have,
session.
so, Dover, can I pull go into executive sessions for purposes of discussing strategy related to non-union contract bargaining and union collective bargaining, and we will be returning this.
Sherborn is saying things.
Yeah, what, returning to open?
Yeah, pretty much.
You missed that, or, yes, briefly.
That was an opening statement.
Yes.
Yes.
So region.
Okay, great. So welcome back to the open session of our meeting, and I think at this point we're ready to have a motion made.
So- I will make a motion to appoint Bill McCullough as our interim superintendent for the 2016-17 school year, extending his current contract with the salary updated as $176,750, and all other components remaining the same.
And the 12 would be separate motion?
No, that's really the
This
same.
is a change.
It's
It's
the
a-
same.
That was the last contract.
Is this a union, 15
Yes.
vote?
It's like everybody can vote on this. We decide.
Union 50 and Region and Sherborn and Dover.
Is that four calls?
That's 4 calls. Okay, so we have the motion for the region, same motion for Dover, same motion for Sherburne, same motion for the union.
And we need a second.
Yeah.
That's not right. It's Union 50 and the region.
It is, we're to.
It is,
appoint, but
it is.
Because there's a
It's the
salary
budget.
component, it's the budget, we just.
I'm gonna miss that.
Don't worry, I'm still here.
We've
Or
learned
if you're
from your
regionalized,
disappointment that you'd rather be inclusive and cover all the
One
bases.
one way or the other is
Superfluous.
superfluous.
Okay, so do we have a second? And everyone's. Okay, great.
Yeah, second.
So any further discussion from any of the 4 committees? Okay.
Region, all in favor?
Dover, all in favor? And then Doug County here. Sure, all in favor?
Aye.
And then Union 50.
On Union 50.
50 and 4, Martin, and the other union.
Everybody raise your hand.
I'm thinking 49.
That wasn't.
I just want to say really
Oh, yes.
quickly, publicly, this is the last joint meeting for Dawn and for Frank and the Franks. And so I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll miss you all. We'll miss you.
I'm not there for anything.
May I just say that I want to say, really rewarding and enjoyable, terms working with such a fine body of people and a lot of, worthwhile things.
And the region's all staying intact. Congratulations. All right. Now, thank you.